showing people what's already there. In Liverpool has an amazing cultural offer. It had some all these different stats, but like lots and lots of Georgian buildings, a really beautiful architecture, incredible cultural offer, one of the best outside London, and all people knew about was crime and problems and issues, riots and things. We even made a joke that the tagline of the capital of culture should be riot-free since 1981. It really was that negatively seen. But actually, it had this amazing offer. And what the perception change did wasn't to sell something that wasn't there, but to actually point out the things that are there and help people view that. And obviously there were changes internally, and there was a different sense internally, and that came through as well. But actually, a lot of what people talk about, so for example, the Tate was there in '96. But it wasn't talked about, it wasn't really pulled together, and it was that coming together and talking about the place as a whole. So generally, across the city, and I think to a degree, increasingly the sub-region, the region just around Merseyside, there's been a huge benefit in terms of local national business. Liverpool is still really poor, it's still one of the poorest cities in England, and we've had huge cuts. So there's been a 25% cut in public sector jobs over the last 5 years. It's a huge blow to the city, which is the main employer previously. But private sector jobs numbers are still rising, and they're rising compared to other cities of its type. And there is a growth in businesses again. And there is particularly creative professional businesses. So I think what there has been is a growth in the higher earning businesses rather than the call centre trade, which is what was happening mostly in Liverpool. And there's been an increase in terms of hotel nights booked year on year still, even in 2015, it was still going up from 2013. So that change and that positive experience, even in a time of cuts and recession, is really quite important. And I think this whole thing is a virtuous circle. So when I was speaking to some of the big investors in Liverpool, they were saying the Capital of Culture year, obviously, the money wasn't that big a deal to us, but it was the image change. So KPMG said we can attract the top consultants here. They will move here now. I mean, Liverpool's got 5 golf courses nearby. It's now got this amazing shopping centre, and it had, the right sort of shops, which I don't care about at all, but I think they were going to talk about getting Harvey Nichols at one point. So it had the right sort of shops, which I'm told was good for the wives, which I don't even like saying. This is the sort of person I was speaking to. And it has really good cultural offer. It has really good things to do in the evening, and it feels safe and it feels like a good place to live. And so they can attract the right sort of people and they can invest there. The feeling of pulling things together and the ease of working meant that businesses were more likely to want to go into partnerships and develop partnerships with the local authority, and thus be able to invest. So there's a sort of speeding up of working. And obviously it's seen much more as a weekend break holiday destination, which again brings people in and makes people see that it's a nice place to possibly move to. It's a virtuous circle. And what we notice is the effect is across all sizes and sectors of business. It's not just the tourism sector. It really included, development, obviously housing, sales, and various different consultancies. The second thing which I think really changed and made a big difference is the pride and confidence in the city of the people who live there. People across the city felt better about their community, but they also felt part of a bigger community. There are lots of divides within Liverpool. There's rich, poor, north, south. There's the sort of more settled, much more white areas and the much more mixed minority ethnic areas. Liverpool's got a very strong identity already, but I think that recognition of travelling across your boundary and looking at the cultural offer of different bits of the city came across more. And what a lot of people in health and education reported was a sort of growing confidence in engaging with something that was a bit different from the norm. You're prepared to do something you wouldn't do otherwise. So health in Liverpool really uses culture, and it uses arts offer. And they say it's particularly good for attracting kind of middle-aged men who might normally not want to go into a health centre or feel like there's any risk to their health, but they can do something quite different. So there's a movement called Men in Sheds, for example, which is, you kind of go and hang out and fix things and talk to people. But obviously you can at that point introduce, suggestions about testing for various different middle-aged illnesses, and actually encourage, and there are other projects which work with older people which encourage them to leave the house and meet with different people, and they're all done through a kind of much more open, much less judgmental. Health is quite a judgmental, it's kind of problematic area, whereas art is a nice warm, inclusive area. So a lot of the health offer, the public health offer in Liverpool, is now delivered through a kind of arts engagement with the City Council. The other thing is a sense of democratic participation. It's shown through volunteering levels up, and I think even more importantly, the kind of small-scale social enterprise. Lots of different initiatives arising, people's sense that you can do things, you can change things, you can make a difference. I mean, an example for me is the project that won the 2015 Turner Prize for Architecture, which hasn't ever been won by something like this before, which is a regeneration project to improve some streets, some very old Victorian terraces that are about to fall down, and they did them all up as a kind of collective. And the project was done because because people in the area cared about it, but it actually ended up getting more and more fame, and it won this Turner Prize, so it got a huge amount of publicity, and it's worth having a look at it. So you've got this kind of rising skills, greater confidence, and a greater willingness to take risks and try things out. And the other thing is the new partnership models, new ways of working. This is a really intangible thing, but it has been incredibly important. I think to say that the idea of kind of creativity or working differently, working with and through culture, sort of underlies all the decisions made about doing work in Liverpool. How can we make this fit together? How can we work differently? And Phil Redmond, who is the chair of Liverpool 2008 and is a local businessman, he sort of described it as creative responses to harsh economic times. There is a massive, massive cut in local authority spend in the UK. It's just a huge cut. There is a lot of the opportunities aren't there, but he says you can play with things with cultural offer. You can play with ideas, you can bring different partners on board, and it gives you that real opportunity to run the city differently and bring different partners on board. And I think that's the thing that's really happened. The City Council is more confident about levering in funding. Partners know each other. Different sectors know how they work, each other work, particularly private sector working with culture, tourism working with culture and local authorities. And also there's the 5 local authorities in the sub-region are working much more closely together. So in 2005 they were pretty much not working with each other at all. They're really working together, and they're going to form one government now. I don't think they had a lot of choice, but the positivity is greater now. There's much more of a sense of using what the region can offer and what it can get together. And I think this is really clear to say this is across health, it's across education, it's not just across culture and tourism. So, how to do it? These are my top tips on how to do it. Number 1, don't leave it to someone else. So, obviously, the body that I don't think you should leave it to most, the body that I think people are most tempted to leave it to, is the delivery body. There's a sense that, okay, so they deliver this event and then they deliver this legacy in some way, but legacy has to be embedded in the ongoing action of the local authority, of the region, of the local businesses, networks, cultural ecology, and voluntary sector organisations and the people. Everyone's doing it together, and in the places where it's worked, it's because everyone's been involved in it. So the commune and the region are key, but they shouldn't be the central driver. They should be part of a partnership, pulling everything together. Start early, and to be fair, actually, I wanted to do a big tick on this. August 2017 has been talking about legacy since 2010 when I first came. There's been a really strong talk about it. A lot of the structures that are built in, involving the region, really closely involving the city. Actually, it's really been thought through from the beginning. And as you've got your legacy document ready, the next step is to make what is an aspirational legacy document an action plan. And I think that's the step that you still have the opportunity of the delivery body to kind of facilitate, but it's got to be an action plan for all. It's about making sure that by the time this year ends, people are really clear. The people in the city, the people in the region, and then the decision makers are really clear who's doing things, who's doing what and how. Ensure a good handover, really important. As soon as you say it, it's obvious, but a lot of cities of capitals of culture, and Liverpool was included, had the contracts ending on December the 31st of the year. So obviously people were looking for jobs, and then they were all leaving, and then they just left. I mean, getting data was a nightmare in some cases for us because everyone just went. So it was sort of like an emptying ship as we'd come in, and there'd be less and less people on the desks. And luckily they kept 1 or 2 people on, and they moved. In the end, Liverpool moved its delivery department into its culture department because it had no culture department during the time. It's very different from the model you have. So luckily there were 1 or 2 people left, but there really were a few people left. It was a huge room, probably as big as this, and it just has no people in it. You'd walk in and there'd be, like every time, there'd be less people. And that's not the way to do it. A really strong phased handover, clarity as to who owns what, where the data is, and who can use it. Really important. The more you put in, the more you get out. And that's true at a whole level for the city and region. It's true for an individual. It's true for individual businesses, particularly. They're the ones I spoke to who said, I feel like I got a lot from it. Initially, I was investing time and energy, but actually, we've reaped the rewards now. So that's true for organisations, cultural organisations who might be leaders of culture in the future, but it's also true for anybody, anywhere. The more you put in, the more you get out. And share and collaborate. So it's all about partnerships. It's not about something led by one body that everyone nods to. It's about a collaborative partnership. So I think that the issue around reflecting and rethinking is a really important one to bear in mind. It's something that Aarhus has done from the beginning. And in terms of Liverpool, what it did was Liverpool used 2008 to redefine Liverpool in people's minds in the UK. When you hear Liverpool, you hear something different. It was a chance to rethink, and it was very thought through. It was very much a decision process that was worked through at all points and then carried on after the year itself. What is your rethink going to be? What is it going to be that you're doing? And keep doing that and think it through and play it through and tell the story. It's incredibly important that individuals just talk and tell the story. Phil Redmond is an amazing storyteller. To an extreme degree, he makes up stories, he tells all sorts of things, he's very good at spinning, but actually he really pushed it through, and it's all about the other people telling the story, not the official line. It's about the everyday stories. What did it do to me? What did it do to this, that, the other? So it's their businesses' stories that I think have been most useful. And I think it's really important to think about research as legacy. So every European Capital of Culture experience is different, and the research programme, and particularly the really big, huge collaboration between Aarhus 2017, the city region, and Aarhus University, Rethink Impacts 2017, is a really fantastic opportunity to explore and understand Aarhus' model for legacy. It's about discussing things. It's set up to have a space to discuss and develop. It's not an imposed framework that's just sort of put there from outside. It's a space to think and evolve a new way of thinking about what that capital of culture legacy could be, and it will be a legacy in and of itself. And a research programme needs to explore the difference that 2017 made. It needs to explore the difference it made. The difference won't happen in the next 2 years. The difference will happen in the next 10 years. Liverpool has just commissioned a piece of work for 2018, looking at the impacts of 2008, 10 years later. This is the right way to do it. This is the gold standard of research. You need to keep thinking about researching and looking at impacts because it will happen over the long term. But think about, in the short term, we need to think about what's happened, what differences have made in all those impact areas, and particularly thinking about that kind of sense of confidence in how the people change, because that's what carries things through, new partnerships, that's what carries change through. But what opportunities has it not given yet? Could it give that if we change things, or could it never do that? But actually, because these opportunities may arise, things that have started now